Jennifer, let me ask you this. I live in Arkansas now, but I'm obviously not originally from here. You had never been to the state of Arkansas before you heard Helen gone. Why would a case in Arkansas like this intrigue you so much?
Well, it had nothing to do with the location, but I remember telling you on that first phone call that what really caught my attention about Rebecca's case was the fact that someone tried to clean that crime scene and then her body was moved to a secondary location. And those actions are so rare. I mean, I know they happen in movies a lot, but in real life, it is very rare for a killer to stick around a crime scene any longer than necessary, particularly to clean a house and do laundry and then transport a body. I mean, it's a lot of work at a huge level of risk. And most killers just don't take that risk. And it was clear that police over the years just did not understand the importance or the significance, I should say, of Rebecca's killer taking those actions. They clearly overlooked it. And that was something that intrigued me and that I really wanted to write about because I consider one of my specialties to be behavioral analysis in homicide investigations. And so that's what caught my attention. And then secondarily was the weapon, or the supposed weapon was supposedly a piano leg. And I did a ton of research and I literally cannot find another case yet where a piano leg was used as a murder weapon. And that doesn't mean it didn't happen or it hasn't happened, but that just tells you how rare it is. And so I think the weapon, if that was it, offers a lot of clues and insight into what happened as well. And so those were some of the issues that I brought up to you in our first conversation. And then what was it, maybe 3 weeks later, I think I called you and I was like, so I was thinking of actually driving out there because I wanted to see these locations firsthand. It's so valuable to stand in a location where a victim was killed or a victim was discovered, where the body was discovered. It will speak to you. There are things that you just can't comprehend or notice without being there in person. And that's something that I really wanted to do before I dove into this long series of articles that I plan to write. And so when I asked you about coming out there and you said you'd be able to meet up, and then you offered to take me to Dr. Gould's house, Rebecca's father's house, and he was agreeable to meet as well. And so that's when I just, said to my husband, you want to take a road trip? Literally. And he's always up for an adventure. So, he immediately agreed. And then we went from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you came here, you and I had some lengthy discussions before you came here. You had thought, as I originally thought, that the killer more than likely was a female or maybe a set of females. But as soon as you came here and read the autopsy report, your opinion on that changed. Why did it change?
Yes. Well, I originally thought a female perpetrated this crime because the areas of injury were to Rebecca's face and her head. And when a victim's face is targeted, sometimes that's indicative of jealousy. And so it would be another female that would be jealous of this person's good looks, and they make an attempt essentially to destroy those good looks in murdering them. But after I got a copy of the autopsy report, and then I consulted my really good friend Carly, who's been an EMT and a trauma room nurse and in the medical field for years, and we went through it word by word, literally, and picked it apart, we realized that Rebecca's face wasn't actually the target. It was probably accidental that she took a blow that shattered her nose. Most likely, she had her back turned to the killer. The killer meant to strike her probably on the right side of her head from the rear, take her by surprise, but for whatever reason, she probably turned her head into that swing of the weapon. And so that changed the whole scenario for me in my mind. And there also just wasn't any female suspects we came up with to where they would stick around and clean Rebecca's boyfriend's house. I mean, why would you do that? You have no direct link to it. You don't live there. You're never going there again. Were there a couple females that were on the suspect list? Yes, but it didn't fit to me that a female would go into Casey's home and bludgeon Rebecca to death and then care at all about cleaning the scene up and moving her body, which is not easy for a male to do, let alone a female. And so my mind started changing at that point.
Yeah, the main woman who actually they had considered a suspect or interviewed as a suspect was actually 7 months pregnant at the time, which it didn't make any sense that she would get into a physical confrontation with somebody being that pregnant. And like you said, cleaning up after just didn't make any sense. So when you came to Arkansas, what were some things that stood out to you, like going to the place where her body was dumped and also the route that the killer took to remove her from Casey McCullough's home? What stood out to you?
The location where Rebecca's body was found was really remote. I mean, I kind of already figured that out from imagery, but we drove there, and it is basically a sanctioned overlook area, I guess. There is a gravel area where you can pull your car off the road. But when we did that, I mean, it was dead silent. You could hear, if a car was coming up the road, which was rare, you could hear it from a good probably quarter mile away. And so it's actually, I don't want to call it safe, but somebody who knows the area and knew that location probably knew the chance of being discovered disposing of her body there was slim. The other thing we discovered is that at the bottom of the embankment where Rebecca's body was found was a dirt road. That I had not known prior to going there myself. And so after we realized there's a dirt road leading right to where her body was found, Jesse, my husband, and I got on imagery, and I think you were there for some of this too, and Dr. Gould, we were looking at Google Earth and realized there's almost a direct path, a dirt road from Casey's house to the location where Rebecca was found. And so,
Yes.
assuming that the killer took that route, which we think they did now, that told us the killer had to know the local area because there was no way Jesse and I would have found our way down that road without Google Maps. And
No.
Google Maps didn't exist back in 2004. So somebody knew these roads, these back roads intimately. Because
Yeah,
the
I
only
mean,
other two routes, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, when we're talking about that route in particular, it was basically an old timber road that,
Hmm.
logging trucks was used. I mean, I think the word gravel road is, I think that's too kind for this, what we're talking about here. This thing, you're not taking a regular car down this road without potentially causing major damage. But yeah, the other route that you were talking about, quite literally, one of them would have driven within proximity to the sheriff's department and would have taken the killer through the main town, like driving past the courthouse and the town square and all the businesses. I mean, you would have to pass everybody to get there, which made no sense. And I remember even back when the murder, when this originally happened, they kind of left that thought out there that it was possible. And I was like, that just doesn't make it. I mean, who is going to throw a body in their car and then drive right past the sheriff's department? That just,
Right. And, through any town where you could get in a fender bender, you could get a flat tire, you have to pull over. Now a cop pulls up behind you to help you and you've got a dead body in your trunk or whatever. I mean, it's just so incredibly risky. That's not to say it's never happened because we know that there have been killers that drove through a town with a body in their trunk. But looking at the situation here and the options for routes, the dirt road was the most direct and shortest and quickest and the safest. I mean, when we drove it, I think we saw one other car. So again, the killer has intimate knowledge of this area and knows that that's the safest way to get to a secondary location that ostensibly seems very far away from Casey's house, but taking that dirt
mm-hmm.
road, it's only about 7 miles. It's really not that far.
And Jen, we know this, and we don't know exactly how it went down, but we also know another fact too. If you take that route from Casey's house to the spot where she's dumped, you can get back up onto a main highway, Highway 9, which leads you back towards Mountain View and the White River. We know that there were several
Sure.
pieces of evidence. The piano leg is missing. Her suitcase has never been located, as far as we know. There are probably some other items we don't know about just yet. So it also provides, if you can dump her body, no cars are coming, you can get back up onto a main highway, and then within a couple of minutes, you're at a pretty large river that's a part of the Mississippi
Yeah,
Delta system where you can dump that stuff, because that stuff's never been found. And we know the police checked that river for evidence
they
several
did.
times.
Yeah, they sent a dive team out there the next spring under that particular bridge looking for evidence. So we don't yet know what tip led them to, form that dive team, but it must have been something fairly credible for them to go to that kind of effort. So that remains to be seen what they were searching for. But there is a newspaper article that says they were searching for a murder weapon. The problem with that is that a piano leg isn't going to sink. So I don't know if maybe at the time they were under the impression that something like a tire iron maybe had been used or something metal. But at some point when we get the case file and when this goes to trial, I'm sure we'll find out that detail.
Absolutely. And so from your behavioral analysis, after you got the autopsy report, after you visited the state, I mean, you and Jesse were here for like a week. I mean, you guys spent a lot of time here. After doing all of that, from your behavioral analysis standpoint, what were you able to glean about the killer?
Well, most likely it was someone known to Rebekah. If this murder occurred on Monday morning, which I'm still not confident of, she would have let the person in the house. There was no forced entry. And like I said, in analyzing that autopsy report, the only way we can recreate the injury that shattered her nose and her nasal structure is that she had her back turned to the killer and turned her head to the right into that first swing. Well, if you're in the middle of an altercation, no matter if you know the person or not, most likely you're not going to turn your back to them. So again,
Right.
That tells us it's someone she knew and someone she trusted. And it's possible it's someone that she had been in an argument before, but nothing had happened. So she felt comfortable. My guess is that they argued, she turned her back to walk away. And then the person came after her. And as we'll discuss, the problem with this is that it doesn't match up with the guy who was arrested for her murder. But those behavioral analysis deductions are what led us to believe that her boyfriend was at least involved or swung the weapon at her.
Right. So, you and I developed a theory after all of this, after this process, that the person who killed her was someone very close to her. Now, when she was found in a t-shirt and panties. So when this happened, whoever was there, if she's turning their back to them, she feels comfortable being clothed in this manner in front of that person. So there's clues there. The cleanup is a huge clue because the person who cleaned up would have to be someone who had a reason to clean up that particular house. And none of that makes any sense with the person, and we're about to get to him, who committed the crime or allegedly committed the crime, who they have charged with this crime. So, Jennifer, one thing that you and I did is we put together a Facebook page a few months after we were going to try to do some crowdsourcing, to try to see if we could, get some more people who may have some information to come forward and talk to us. And so tell us a little bit about the effort to put together that Facebook page.
Well, I was hesitant at first because there were so many other Facebook pages out there for Rebekah already, but you and I weren't the admin of any of them. And I know we ran into some frustrations with posts being taken down or altered or whatnot. Things that we wanted to put out there weren't being put out there. And so you really pressured me, or not pressured me, but convinced me that we should just form our own page so we were in charge of it. And that really was one of the best decisions that we made. And we ended up, now we have almost 2,000 members on the page. But yeah, we had some very, very insightful, interesting discussions going on in there. It was much more, I feel like we made a great effort to keep focused on the details of the case and try to figure out what those details meant and engage the members in conversations. And through that, I think we gained the trust of most of those members because many of them came to us through phone calls or emails or private messages on Facebook with information that they thought might be helpful. And obviously, as we'll get to, some of those tips were extremely helpful and instrumental in gaining an arrest.
Yeah, we actually were able to get an ex of one of the characters in this whole saga actually started communicating with us and actually provided some major insights that really helped hone and shape what we were doing.
Yeah.
And so
actually more than one ex. There was a few exes that reached out.
You know what? There was one in particular I was thinking of, but yeah, there were a couple actually. One in very particular. I guess I think a lot of people who have followed this case, they know this. the guy that has been arrested, William Miller, in the murder of Rebekah Gould, he actually joined our page. Jennifer, I think he joined maybe in September of 2019.
I believe we started the page in early, it was either late September, early October, and then he joined around November 8th. So within like a
November.
month.
Okay.
So he was watching. He was obviously keeping track of what was going on with her case. Yeah, he joined shortly after we formed the group, and then started posting comments on different threads and throwing out theories. And even he himself said the killer must have had local knowledge of the area in order to know that route that was taken to dispose of her body. And looking back, it's creepy, and it still bothers me. But I think it also helped achieve a goal, which was helped get an arrest. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, and also I think that it should be noted he kind of honed in on you because he started private messaging you a lot.
He
Like more,
did. He and I communicated for many months. Yeah. And
and it got to the
I know after, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it got to the point where you started talking to me like, I think this guy is Casey's cousin. Remember that? We talked about that. And you said, I don't understand why he's trying to hide his identity. And I think you just
Yeah.
told him, we know you're his cousin. And of course, we had the thought process, okay, this guy he's a mole for Casey to try to figure out what other stuff we know, because we people will always say that we were terrible about releasing too much information about things that we found out. They'll never understand the stuff that we held back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In an
There's
attempt to
still so
not
many
hinder
things
the.
that we've never released.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so we thought he was a mole. You thought he was a mole. I did. But this whole investigation, he's on our page talking to us. This whole investigation turned in September of 2020.
It
And
did.
and we haven't divulged a whole lot of how or why it turned, but it turned because a new witness presented themselves to the lead investigator in the case. And it related to William Miller. He was, I guess we should give a little background on William since we're talking about him. William is Casey's first cousin. He had a brother named Jeremy, or has a brother named Jeremy, who went to school at the Mount Pleasant school system, which doesn't exist anymore, but was in existence in 2004. Now, William is from Texas. And so he had come up to visit his mom and brother that weekend. That's the story we've been told to this point, that he came up to visit them that weekend, and that's why he was in town. And so we don't know the exact day, but when Rebekah went missing, Jeremy was taken out of school abruptly, and then they just went to Texas. They just left. And some of the people who
Mm-hmm.
worked at the school thought it was very odd or suspicious. And they said that they alerted the police back in 2004, but no one ever moved on it. They never did anything with it. Well, then finally someone who had been in contact with us said that they were going to go ahead and go talk to there was a new investigator at this
Yeah.
point, and that new investigator, his office wasn't that far from where they worked, and so they went and talked to him, and then all of a sudden things started happening. One of the things that happened almost immediately after this person went and talked to him is William Miller vanished off our page.
He was still a member, but he went silent almost to the day. And it's not that he could have known that particular day that this witness went to Mike McNeil, the investigator, but something must have started floating around. And part of it's probably through Casey, because Casey was brought back in for questioning shortly after. So then
Just
Casey
days
probably
later.
told William, watch out, now that they're asking me about you now.
Yeah.
Which, side note, is just absolutely infuriating to me, and I don't understand. Like, Casey and his family darn well knew that William had been in town the weekend of Rebekah's murder and never breathed a word about him. And shame on all of you for that. Because
Absolutely.
people knew all these years, for 16 years, people knew that William had been in town and probably suspected him or knew and did not say a word.
And the thing of it is that once the police did move on this detail, it was just a matter of weeks after that. Because what had happened
It was less than 2 months.
yeah, I mean, it was, way less than, it was like 6 weeks. because
Mm-hmm.
they start moving on that detail. What happened with William Miller is after the murders, he lived in Texas for a while, then he kind of bounced around, and then he started working on oil rigs, like in international waters. Like he was around the world, and he ended up settling down in the Philippines for a while. He married a woman there and had a family. He already had a wife and kids here in the States. I guess they got divorced, and then he moved on.
They did.
And so he was living in the
Mm-hmm.
Philippines in a little plantation there. And he came back in like February of 2020 to buy some land in Oregon with his family members, and they were going to start a farm there. And of course, there was some nonsensical stuff that was released by the police saying, well, we were on to this guy forever, and we were going to, we couldn't get to him because of, he was in the Philippines and all this other stuff. Well, he was in Oregon in February, but they didn't interview him until November. So they weren't on to
Correct.
him until this detail came out, until this information came out. And so the detective goes to Oregon, interviews him and Jeremy on November on or about November 7th, because we don't know how long the interview lasted. We do know that he was booked into the county jail there on November 7th, early in the morning, which so happens to be my birthday. So I was pretty happy about that.
Yep. Happy birthday to
So
you.
happy birthday to me. First murder case I ever covered. And the guy got caught in Eugene, Oregon, which I used to live just outside of Eugene, Oregon, which is really weird to me too. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you, the, tell us a little bit about the emotional rush. And the reason I'm asking about that is when you're in this space, you work on, you write about, you work on, you investigate cases that quite literally may never get solved. You quite
Mm-hmm.
literally will see family members live and die in this space, and they never get resolution. They never know the answers. And this was the first case I covered as a journalist, the first murder case. This was your first case, like doing what we've done like this. So what was it like when you got the call that there had been an arrest?
It was hard to explain because, like you said, it's such a long road and you never know if there's going to be an end. And I remember around the time that major tip came in that we had a discussion, and I was getting worried because I said, George, I'm starting to run out of ideas to keep the pressure on. I mean, we had purchased a billboard and put it on Main Street in downtown Melbourne. We had gone to the FBI. We had gone to the lieutenant governor. We had written letters to, I mean, all this stuff, and nothing was panning out. It didn't seem like anything was being done. And I was like, I'm starting to panic a little bit that we are running out of options here and places to go and people to try to get help from. But when I first got a text from Rebekah's dad that morning, and it said, don't talk to anybody, call me immediately. And I knew, and I just like, it's making me emotional now to even recall this, but I just got tears. And I got on the phone with him, and he told me, and he didn't even know anything, which is kind of a disgrace. All the Arkansas State Police would tell him is that they had made an arrest, and we knew it wasn't Casey who was arrested. Obviously, we would have heard about that in 2 seconds flat. And so we were all
Yeah.
left wondering for a day who was even arrested. And
Yeah. I'm the
and
one that
I
actually
think
sent
you
him the
and I
mugshot of the
eventually were
guy.
like, yeah, you and I were like talking about William Miller. I remember that. And I think it was you that said it's got to either be William or his brother Jeremy. And sure
Yeah.
enough, it was William.
What's funny?
But
He was arrested on a Saturday night. Friday, and I've still got the text message. You and I were talking about him the Friday
yeah.
before he got arrested. And because remember, we were looking for yearbooks, we were trying to put together this other
Oh,
part of this
yeah.
puzzle. And I was like, I remember telling you, I said, and again, one of the exes that we're talking about was onto him before the police were.
hmm Yeah, we were, when we got that tip, we don't have the same resources as police. So what you and I were trying to do in those 6 weeks was establish something that proved William had been in town. And what we were going after was the Mount Pleasant High School yearbook from 2004 to see if Jeremy was in it. We did get the yearbook. He was not in it. And I remember like, okay. So we had a couple friends or sources in the area that went to a couple other local high schools just to double check, cover the bases.
Hmm.
He wasn't in any yearbooks. So that ended up being a dead end. And I remember we were trying to strategize like, okay, what else can we do to try to confirm or refute this claim that this family was in town? And so I think that's what we were doing on that Friday, at
We
least
were.
partly.
We were, I remember it
Like,
vividly. I
what
was at the
next?
park walking. Yeah, I was at the park walking. We were talking, and I was like, I didn't, I pushed back on I thought it was a waste of time. I'm like, first cousin doesn't live here. I mean, has no seeming connection. But I remember that last conversation. I was like, I'm starting to get, there's something here, and I don't know what it is. You could
Mm-hmm.
just feel it. And
Mm-hmm.
so now we're at the point now he's been arrested. We were supposed to have a trial that was going to start in February of next year. That's been pushed for a mental evaluation. So all the pretrial stuff hasn't happened yet. I've told you my opinion on this. I still think that we're careening towards some type of a plea deal where we don't have a trial and maybe don't get all the answers in this case that we want. But I'm the pessimistic journalist. You're the optimistic. I guess professor. I don't know what hat you're wearing today. You got a bunch of them.
The
So
yin to the yang or whatever. Yeah.
right, right.
Um,
So what are some things that you hope are clarified if we get to a trial or once we get the case file? What are some things that you're looking for to clarify in this case?
well, we obviously just want to know the whole scenario of what actually happened to Rebekah. I mean, her father deserves that answer. And I know that's the number one thing that he's after. How did Rebekah and William even come to know each other? I mean, it pretty much had to be through her boyfriend, Casey. I don't know how else they would have met because, like you said, William was living in Texas and Rebekah had moved to Fayetteville, Arkansas. There's no way their paths crossed just haphazardly.
Right,
But I want to know who else was involved or knew about it. I mean,
right,
what do you tell your mother and brother to convince them to flee the state with you? I mean, he almost had to have told them somewhat of the truth. And so, what did they know
right,
all along? And then, of course, the big thing we want to know is how are the police tying or linking William Miller to this murder? Because if you ask me, there's just as much evidence pointing at Casey as there is at William, if not more. And so,
right,
do they have DNA of some sort? Do they have the weapon that has his fingerprints? Maybe they had an unknown DNA sample all these years and didn't figure out who it belonged to, until last summer. So, those are some of the key things that we want to find out. And one way or another, they're going to come out and we will publicize them once this is said and done. Even if there's no trial, we'll be able to get the case file or at least parts of it and we'll be able to piece together what happened. But oh, the other one is who got
absolutely.
immunity for turning William in,
Yeah, and
because
see, and
I think you
that's
and
the
I
tricky
both kind
one.
of feel is there may be an immunity deal in play here. So we obviously want
Yeah,
to find that out too.
and if there's no trial, we may never
But
figure out if there was an immunity deal. That's the problem with no trial is that if there's no trial, then there's no deal, there's no paperwork, there's no that'll be a problem. And like you said, and I would point this out on the Casey front, the night of the murder, he didn't return home to his blood-soaked house where his girlfriend had been, according to the police's timeline, was murdered that
so he
morning there.
says, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but we have two police statements from two friends that went out with him that night who both said that he was on the phone and he said that she was missing, and both of them both said they couldn't believe he wasn't running out the door to try to find her because he was obsessed with her. And then he ended up staying the
Yeah.
night smoking marijuana at a friend's house, and he stayed the night there, which is something he never did ever. And then of course I interviewed him back in the day and I asked him, I said, so the next morning you had to be at work. Did you return to your home to get clothes and all that other stuff to go to work? And he flat out told me, no, I did not. Well, it turns out that was absolutely a lie. He did return.
I'll
Her
lie.
dog was there. Her car was there. Her keys were there. There was blood all over that house. The mattress had been flipped. I mean, I always ask people this question when I talk about this case. How many times could you walk into your own home, you walk into your bedroom and your mattress is flipped and the sheets are missing? You don't think that you're going to go take a cursory look to see where all that stuff is at? Your pillows are
Hmm.
stuffed underneath the bed and they're covered in blood.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it. Sorry.
I'm not either.
Somebody knew something.
I'm not either. Yep, I think that bed was still bloody Tuesday morning, and he panicked. But we'll find out one of these days, and maybe I'm wrong, and that's fine. That's just my theory. But unfortunately for now, that's not it's not the end of the story. It's the end of this chapter in this story, because now we're in limbo waiting for trial or what may come next. But we will most definitely come on here and give viewers an update when any of that happens. I will be out in Arkansas whenever the pretrial hearing and trial occur, and I will definitely be doing some video for viewers then. And in the meantime, you and I have teamed up to help another family, and that's the family of murder victim Debbie Sue Williamson. And in some future sessions here, you and I are going to go through her case and give some pretty exciting updates that we have and talk about the progress we've made in finding her killer.
Yep. Speaking of new chapters, I guess we're going to start a new one the next time we're on here.
Yep. So stay tuned, everybody. Please keep following us on YouTube. Please message us if you do have any information or even just questions about the cases that we discuss or insight. And if you'd like, you can join our Facebook group for Rebekah, which is the Unsolved Murder of Rebekah Gould. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.